July 1975 Audio Magazine Car Stereo Directory, ADS showed off their 2001 car stereo system, which included bookshelf speakers and a 4-channel amplifier. $475 list price back then is over $2,700 in today's money. The 2001 system included enclosed speakers with 4-inch mid-range drivers, 1-inch soft dome tweeters, and a 4-channel amplifier with 60 watts by 2 for the mids and 20 watts by 2 for the tweeters. I'll leave a link in the video description below. You can go back and read this almost 50-year-old article. Fast forward to the late 1980s, where ADS, also known as A/D/S, or Analog and Digital Systems of Cambridge, Massachusetts, was known as a high-end car audio brand. Their advertisement showed off these really clean installs in very nice vehicles such as BMWs and Porsches. I put ADS in line with Nakamichi and other companies like Soundstream back in the day, where the normal person couldn't really afford this. This was your mommy and daddy have extra money and you can get whatever you want kind of thing. But ADS was really a drool brand for me back in the day. I've shown the larger brother PQ20 in previous videos. Check links in the video description. But today we're going to look at the PQ10 and also check out this car stereo review from spring of 1988. We'll take a look at the amplifier section. The PQ10 was marketed as a 160 watt power amplifier, $460 back in the day. And yes, if we convert that to today's money, it's around $1,200 in 2023, so that's big money. The exterior of the PQ10 is a gray powder coat finish. You can tell this one's in pretty good shape. However, the logo on the top is not the factory one. As you can see here, mine's a little bit newer logo. But here is the outside of the amp again. Fantastic shape to be as old as it is, but all the connections here are on one side of the amp, which I always love this. Makes it super easy to install, makes it very clean to install. But here on the far left, you'll see the ground plus 12 and remote. Also an ATC style 30 amp fuse. Also the manual says 10 gauge, but I had a hard time fitting 12 gauge wire in here. Moving on over, you can see channel 1 and channel 2. Also how to bridge the amplifier, which we'll get to that later. Channel 3 and channel 4. Also at the top of the amplifier, there are 2 potentiometers there for controlling the input gain of the amplifier. Then we have switches for stereo and bridge, and channels 1 through 4 for RCA inputs. Again, all the controls here are accessed via the top of the amp, and these are slotted screws. So it's very clean. Way back then in the late 80s to have something like this was super nice and really made it feel premium. Even today, the way these operate are very nice, other than the terminals being a little bit small. Speaking of small, overall, the amp was not very large to be a 160 watt amp back in the day. 11.25 by 6.1 by 2 inches. Millimeter equivalents are there as well. As far as ratings go, 40 by 4 at 4 ohms or 2 by 80 at 4 ohms bridged. Now, this is across a full bandwidth. They also include a 1 kilohertz rating, which is the one we're going to follow. 4 by 50 or 2 by 100. Now back in the day, we didn't have access to things like the SMD demoriginating amplifier dyno, but that's what makes this so fun, is that many, many years later, we can. We're going to find out what the power output is. We'll find out the ohm load. Also the voltage of the dyno, we'll show all that, plus we'll calculate some efficiency for you. Now here with the 4-channel test, we did load all channels. We tested 2 of them. And first up, we're going to try 8 ohms in the 4-channel mode. This is not a typical mode that you will see with 4-channel amps in car audio. This is more of a home audio thing with 8 ohms, but we figured we'd try it anyway. Certified test takes us to 1% distortion. We're right at about 30 watts per channel at 14.28. Uncertified takes us up to the clipping point. Virtually the same, about 30 watts per channel. And then we'll try the dynamic track, which sends a 1 kilohertz pulse track into the amplifier to check out the dynamic headroom of the amp. And we're right at 35 watts. When I see a dynamic test equal pretty much the certified test, tells me that the amplifier is regulated. Let's try 4 ohms 4-channel. It's rated 50 watts by 4 at 1 kilohertz. And yeah, we get right at it. 52 and 50 watts at 14.18. Now let's try it up to the clipping point. See what we get. Do we get a little bit more? We get exactly the same, 52 and 50 watts at 14.18. What about dynamically? Are we going to get a little bit more power here? just a little bit, ever so little, into the upper 50s, say about 59 watts average at 14.29. Now let's load the amplifier at 2 ohms in the 4-channel mode. It's rated 50 watts by 4. Let's check out 2 of those 4 channels here. Certified test of 1% distortion, right at 60 watts, 14.05. Most likely the uncertified run is going to be very similar, and yes, you can see virtually identical, 61 and 58 right at 14 volts. Next up, let's try the amp dynamically with the 1 kilohertz burst tone. As you can see here, we're a little bit over 80 watts, about 83 watts average times 4 at 14.2. Now we're going to bridge the amp and try it 8 ohms, 2 channels, but in order to bridge the amp, we have to use channel 1 minus, channel 2 plus, channel 3 plus, channel 4 minus. That's a very odd way, but everything's labeled right here on the amp. We have to switch to little settings here to bridge mode, and then for RCAs we use channel 1 and channel 4. Everything is silkscreen on the amp. That's always really nice, so if you ever lose a manual, you have all the settings. Let's see here. ADS does not provide ratings, but we got 108 and 103 right at 14 volts. Let's try it uncertified up to clipping 1 kilohertz tone. And again, 108 and 103, exactly the same. So when this amp hits its distortion, it just kind of clamps down. Dynamically, we're able to get just a little bit more power, dB-wise not much, but still 123 and 123 at 14.24. Now let's try 4 ohms, 2-channel modes, rated 100 watts by 2, 4 ohms at 1 kilohertz. We're going to try that. 4 ohms, 1 kilohertz, 1%. We get 135 and 130, 14.2. Uncertified up to clipping. Is it going to be the same old story? Pretty much. 136, 129, virtually identical. What about dynamically? Are we going to bust a 200 watt? No, not quite. But we get 170 and 184 at 14.36. Now with curiosity killing the cat, let's try 40 hertz certified bridge, and we still get 112, 114, so about 113 average at 14.24. Then we try it dynamically, and this is kind of weird. One of the channels here is considerably more, 175 on channel 2, 113 on channel 1. I made a graph here of all the results, so you're welcome to pause this if you want to see. I also added in the efficiency numbers, which are, as to be expected, pretty low for a late 80s Class AB amp, around 50%, even less in some tests, down to the 40s. Anyway, overall, the amp performed well for it to be from 1987. I was happy with it. Now, next up, we're going to hook it up to some speakers and try it and see how it sounds with the ELAC bookshelf speakers, which are some of my favorites. So let's give it a listen, see what it sounds like.
Give me ice and fire. You're giving me wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly.
Hip Hop Christmas. Overall sound quality for this amp was very good. I did notice it had a little low end bump, so it almost like it had an EQ circuit built in to boost the bass a little bit. But overall, I really liked the sound. I think it sounded great with the bookshelf speakers. Now we'll flip the amp over so we can take a look at it. Here you can see the model number, the serial number, made in Japan. And we'll take off 3 of the screws here on the bottom. It is missing 1, but then you have to pry it up and kind of pull out. And here are the guts. Very unique design here on this ADS PQ10. You can see 35 volt, 2200 microfarad caps there for the outputs. And speaking of outputs, we'll highlight them here. These are the channel outputs. These are bipolar transistors by NEC, the A1232 and C3012 complementary bipolar junction transistors. And also you see this shield here. This is for EMI shielding of the power supply section, but we can't see all the caps and the good stuff under that, unfortunately. But we can see the power supply transistors here, the B829s. These are NPN transistors. And yeah, there you have it. The guts of the ADS PQ10. This one does not have any built-in crossovers or anything like that. If you want to see the PQ20, I'll leave a link in the video description. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe because we got more videos coming. Big D, I'm out.